Welcome to the Haddonfield Horrors podcast, where we review horror movies and horror movie franchises. Today we're watching Scream 2. I'm your host, Mark,
And I'm Kennedy.
and today we're joined by Maria once again. We're supposed to be joined by Tawan as well, but he's out sick. But before we hop into any of that, Candy, can you give us a plot summary?
Yeah, of course. So, 2 years after the events of Scream, Sidney Prescott and Randy are attending Windsor College. They are trying to get on with their lives until a new Ghostface killing spree begins. With the help of Dewey and Gale, Sidney must find out who's behind the murders. As the body count goes up, the list of suspects go down.
So, Scream 2. What are you guys' initial thoughts when you first played it? Because you guys watched it for the first time for the podcast, right? So, what did you guys think?
Yeah, I think my initial impressions are that I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it enough to immediately watch Scream 3 after it, so I was really surprised because I never really paid attention to the Scream franchise before. I was like, yeah, Ghostface, Sidney Prescott, this stuff doesn't really, this meta horror like doesn't really interest me. But then after watching it, I was happily surprised.
I liked it. I think I kind of actually, I liked it better than the first movie, to be honest.
Same.
Yeah, I feel like it was kind of like, I don't know, there was like more stuff going on. There was more kind of gore, compared to the first one. And I liked the twist at the end, actually. I thought it was pretty cool compared to like the first movie.
I like that it was all still connected to the first one. Like the
Yeah,
killers in this movie are the mastermind is Billy's mother, who we heard about a lot in the first movie but never saw. Which is what I like about this movie, because in this movie we see a lot of two characters that we only saw for a second, or that was only mentioned in the first movie. Which is kind of how I like about this franchise. They'll mention you once in one movie, and then you're like the main focus in the next. I
Yeah, I
also
feel like
prefer this one over the first one.
I feel like this movie like it kind of kept you guessing in a way. Like it was making like a lot of people seem like 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 suspect,
Everybody's
I
a
guess. Yeah,
suspect.
yeah. Like everybody was kind of weird, like everybody was saying stuff and doing stuff that made you think like you're kind of, you're a little sus. But I liked that it was Billy's mom. Yeah, because I liked how it connected to the first movie. But it wasn't like anything like, oh, it's the boyfriend again, or it's, the best friend. Like, no, it was someone that you hear about, but you never really thought about, I guess, You know what I mean?
Yeah, that I get. It was a good surprise. So let's talk about that opening kill, which we do for the Scream franchise, because they're known for their pre-credit kill. And in this kill we have Omar Epps and Jada Pickett Smith, two big stars of the '90s. Well, Jada Pickett is still relevant. Omar is still around, but not as much as he used to be. So, what do you guys think about this one compared to the first one?
I liked it. I felt like it was different, it was like in a different setting. Yeah, and they were around a lot of people too. When it
No
happened.
phone call this time.
Yeah, like it was just kind of like it was cool. I feel like it was different compared to, I guess, the other kills that were really centered around, a girl in her house and they're alone. But this is really, I thought it was really really good.
was this I don't know. I didn't do my research, but was Jada Pinkett Smith, had she already been in the Matrix at this point, or did the Matrix come after this?
No, Matrix came out like the one that she was in came out in like 2002, 2003.
Oh, okay.
The first Matrix wasn't even out at this point. But she
Okay.
had been a big star in black movie, quote unquote black movies. At this point, she had been in the hit TV show A Different World, which is a spinoff of the Cosby Show. She had been a main character in a really good heist movie called Set It Off.
Hmm.
She had been in a bunch of movies. I mean, she was also known for being Tupac's high school sweetheart. So Jada Pinkett was known.
Was she already in Ali? Did Ali come out after this or before? I don't know. I guess I'm asking like random things.
Ali with
Yeah,
Will Smith that
yeah.
came out in the 2000s.
Oh, okay, okay. No, I think the first kill was cool. It was unique because, in the first one, it's kind of like the more typical your house in like a deserted area, so you're all alone. And this one took place literally in the middle of everyone with a shit ton of people there. I like that whole atmosphere of like people like really excited to see the Stab movie, and it was like a hyper fictional sort of like, because obviously like fans aren't really like that. I like to think at least like going to like
I
Star
feel
Wars
like
premieres and stuff.
now
Like
it
it's never like that, but
nowadays they aren't. But I feel like because I've listened to other podcasts talk about horror movies, especially H2O, and they say they kind of had like a similar experience to the crowd in Scream 2, where it was like bad shit crazy of excitement.
well, I would have loved to have been in a theater like that for like Halloween 2018 or something, because it would have made the experience a lot more intense. Uh, but yeah, I think the whole opening segment was awesome. It was really good. Now, I've seen a few complaints where it's like, well, these characters aren't really that important to the story. They weren't even connected to the first movie, so that's what kind of what brings it down. But I don't think that's what the
None,
first kill is
but
about. I
none
think
of
it's
the
just
it's a
yeah,
setup. That's it.
yeah, it's a setup.
But
Yeah,
none of the people who were killed were connected to the first movie. The whole point was that they had names that connected them to the victims in the first movie. But
mm,
besides that, none of them were connected. Like the chick who got threw off the balcony, she only had one scene with Randy and no scenes with Sidney, so that doesn't really matter.
yeah.
My only issue with the scene is when Omar Epps' character dies in the bathroom. So like was Ghostface waiting in the bathroom? He just knew that the guy was gonna have to take a piss at some point. Like, what if the guy didn't have to pee? What if he decided to hold it throughout the entire movie because he didn't want to miss anything?
That's a good point.
What if the bathroom was crowded? What if he didn't go into the stall? And there is no way you can stab through that bathroom, like the toilet partition thingy, that hard, where he's gonna stab him in the ear.
Yeah, that's true. That takes an enormous amount of strength, I would imagine. Those things are pretty durable, I think.
Yeah, and neither of the killers look strong enough to do that. I did like Maureen's death though,
Yeah.
when she gets stabbed in the theater and that scream she does when she falls like in front of the screen.
Yo,
That was pretty cool.
I feel like I had a weird Mandela effect with that moment. Cause I swear I remember watching like a Dead Meat episode about Scream 2, and I could have sworn like she like falls on the thing on the where the screen is, and like people keep like laughing and cheering, but watching it this time around,
That's
everyone.
scary movie.
That was a scary
That's
movie,
scary. That's
yeah.
scary movie.
Oh, that was scary movie. Oh, okay,
So it's not the Mandela effect. You're cross referencing.
okay, cool, cool. I was like, I could have sworn this was a little different. Okay.
Because in Scary Movie, the audience killed her because she was eating loud foods and talking on the phone and stuff. That's why they were cheering at it when she died.
Okay.
But since we're talking about them at the movies, let's talk about Stab, the movie within the movie. What would you guys think? What you guys think about that?
I thought it was like okay, so like the first time I watched it, I don't think I really like paid attention to it, to like the actual movie Stab. But then I watched it like a couple times after, and I didn't realize that they used everybody's real names. Like, why? You know, these people died, and you're gonna use everyone's real names. You know, like I think
Yeah,
because I think it was based off of Gale's book.
it
Um,
was.
yeah, and so she like embellished the murders, but used like made up how some people were killed, but used everybody's real names. Like I don't know. I thought that was weird, and like the fact that like the movie was like I guess made exactly the way it happened. I thought was also kind of
with the
like,
scenes kind of different. And then I like how
yeah.
you got to see, you only saw like two parts. You saw the opening part of the movie, and then you saw the scene between the reenactment of Sidney and Billy having their conversation. And I'm like, I doubt Sidney told Gale about this conversation they had in the hallway, but okay, cool.
Yeah,
And then
and if
they
you
go ahead.
no, because I also noticed like that the first scene where the first killing scene, they made her like, first of all, that house is beautiful. But like there's no way that, like the house was beautiful and it was open, and I thought it was just kind of like not, I don't know how to say it, just it was just kind of weird, like her bathtub was like made out of like rocks and stuff. Like everything looks so
She
high
wasn't even in
end.
the bathroom in the original movie. That's why I was like, why is she taking a shower? Why is she getting naked? Old girl was in the kitchen the entire time during the first movie. But then again, I guess it's like it's a commentary on how when someone makes a movie based off real life events, they change a lot to embellish it. So I was like, okay, it's another commentary within the commentary within the commentary, I guess.
Yeah, that does make sense. I just thought it was kind of like, how are you gonna change all this, like all these things to make it better, but then not change anybody's names, like,
That's rude, to be
like
honest.
everything. Yeah, everything was just out there. Like everybody knew about the murders because of the book, the movie, and they just decided like, oh well, we're just gonna, name the character Sidney Prescott, and that's gonna follow her for the rest of her life. And yeah.
Kennedy, your thoughts on the Stat movie?
uh, was the actress playing? Was that Heather Graham?
Yep, it was.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I would have loved to actually seen like the whole thing, but you don't really get. You only get to see glimpses of the movie. I don't really have too many thoughts about it. Like beyond like I would have been nice to see.
It's a nice concept. I would say that. I like how they had Heather Graham playing Drew. They have Tori Spelling playing Sydney and Luke Wilson playing Billy. Luke Wilson actually auditioned for Billy originally. So that was kind of cool.
Wait, who auditioned as who?
Luke Wilson, who played Billy in Stab, he auditioned to actually play Billy in Scream.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That
and
scene that they show, I think, while Randy and Dewey are in the cafe and he like hits himself, where he's like stupid. I thought that part was kind of weird.
it was very awkward. I was like, whatever. But let's switch gears to talk about our standout moments, good or bad. You have any good or bad scenes or moments?
I think,
You could go ahead.
sorry, I think, well, because like my favorite scene out of, honestly, I think the whole like franchise is when Randy gets murdered. I feel like it's like the goriest scene because it is the most personal. But I don't know. I feel like the way they did it was really cool. When they find his body, it just looked really bloody. Like he was legit like stabbed. Because I feel like
Gale's
usually,
scream still gets to me. I'm like,
yeah, yeah, I felt like a real personal, real like a very intense scene, kind of, when the movie itself is kind of like, a little bit of comedy. You just get stabbed, but I feel like this scene was really, it's just, it stood out for me the most.
yeah, it's stood out because like obviously you have four returning characters. You expect that one or two of them are gonna die because pretty much everyone could die except for Sydney. Did I think it was gonna be Randy who died? I was like, no, he's our horror movie nerd. He tells us the horror movie. He can't die, but then he died, and to know that Mrs. Loomis, well, not Mrs. Loomis, yeah, Mrs. Loomis is the one who killed him because at the time he was talking crap about Billy.
And Billy Loomis,
And you're like, oh,
what
that
the
makes sense. He
fuck?
was saying some very
Jesus.
disrespectful but true stuff about Billy when he got grabbed and stabbed. So, you have anything else?
Well, no, I think I said what I was gonna say.
Any scene you didn't like, or any moment you didn't like?
Um, I guess the scene where Sydney's I think she's in the theater and she's doing her thing, you know, up on the stage, and then she kind of has this moment where she freaks out cuz she thinks she sees you know, Ghostface. I thought it was kind of like weird, I guess. I didn't like it. I didn't really see the point in it. Um Mostly because they made this scene really intense with all, you know, the lights and the music, and there's these other people with robes, and then she sees, you know, Ghostface, and she starts freaking out. Um, I don't know. I felt like they were trying to make that scene kind of like intense to, I guess, to show that, you know, that she's stressed out or something. But I just personally didn't like it. I thought they could have done something else, or they could have like just done. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, they could have just done something else instead of what they did in that scene.
I'm actually the opposite. I actually really like that scene because it was like,
Really?
yeah, because imagine if you're Sydney, right? And, oops, sorry. Yeah, just imagine that you're Sydney and you know that there's a killer coming back and like they're trying to kill you and you don't know what moment, and that's like the perfect opportunity when everyone is wearing a mask. And wasn't she tied to the cross or something, or actually I'm confusing that with Derek.
No, she was given a monologue.
Yeah, giving a monologue, but like still surrounded by all these people, plus you have that past trauma. uh I can imagine that being a moment of like of serious anxiety for her, and like just kind of having a panic attack there when there's a bunch of people with like fake knives, I guess, but you don't know who has like the real weapon.
It was just set up for the finale.
That too. But I thought it was a really, I don't think it was like a super scary scene or anything like that, but I thought it was a pretty uh it was a good scene to demonstrate her anxiety and her trauma. Uh but yeah, I mean, and then going back to Randy's death. That whole sequence I thought was pretty good, where Gale and Dewey are like they're looking for, because Dewey he had to answer the phone, right, and the killer was on the phone, and he was saying that he could see them, so they were basically searching for anybody that had a phone, anyone looking suspicious. I thought that whole sequence was pretty intense.
Anything you didn't like?
Any scene I didn't like? Well, just, you know how I feel about like people who survive the first movie and getting killed in the second one. So I did feel bad for Randy's death. Um, I don't know. I just hate when people who survive the first movie, who survive like the initial movie, die in the second one. I guess Randy was treated
I
with a
feel like
lot
that's
more.
kind of needed though, but it's better than Rachel,
Yeah,
because Rachel got like what 10 minutes of the movie and she did a bunch of stupid shit. At least Randy was actually part of like the movie for the most part.
yeah, yeah. Randy was a cool guy. He's a cool character, and like they had to find a way to bring him back for the third one. I guess I won't get into that, but I like what they did in that movie too. So just this goes to show that people really enjoy this character. So it's a fucking bummer that they killed him and not someone like Dewey. Because I don't really give a shit about Dewey, to be honest.
They keep bringing Dewey back, but I'll get into that later. But for me, obviously, I like the whole Randy scene. It's good. The cat and mouse. Another scene I like is to like, because you already suspect that it could be Derek. You know, history repeats itself. It was Billy the last movie. It could be her new boyfriend this movie. So the scene at the sorority house when he rushes in and gets stabbed, I was like, oh shit, it could be Derek.
Everybody's a suspect!
So I like that scene. And uh, a scene I don't like, that I hate, is when the car crashes and Sidney climbs out. She climbs out and over Ghostface. And she's right there. And like, yes, help your friend out the car, but you're right there. Once Hallie's out the car, rip off the mask, see who it is. But you run away from the car just to stop and be like, I want to know who it is. Like,
True.
what? Bitch, you were just right there. Like, what the fuck?
Hmm.
Uh,
I'm
that
gonna
might be
give
the only
her
one
the
I don't like.
benefit of the doubt, and probably like if she did remove the mask, she would have probably just gotten stabbed there. Because like the next scene when she goes back and he's like already caught up with Sydney's friend and he stabs her. I'm gonna
Yeah,
assume
but
that he was just
also,
faking that he was knocked out, but he really wasn't. He was just kind of playing with him.
how the hell did he get over there so fast? And they didn't
Yeah,
even see him. He would have to get out the car the same way they did, and also like run around to get behind her. Like, what the fuck?
yeah.
That scene's messy. I don't like it. I didn't. Actually, I like that scene. uh, I like the scene with when Derek's tied up and Mickey comes in, because you're like, I knew it. It's the boyfriend and the best friend again, and then boom, Derek gets shot, and Sydney's like, oh shit, I fucked up. It wasn't
Yeah.
him. I should have trusted him. So that was a good scene. I think the scene with Dewey and Gale in the auditorium with projecting, when they're watching like the footage of like Joel's footage, and then they start to see themselves and Randy, and they're like, "Oh shit, it's not."
That's not my footage.
And then he just appears and starts to kill them. But my favorite part about that scene is that scene where he's chasing Gale through the little like radio studio place, and like every time she moves to go hide somewhere, he's like right there behind her, and he's just like barely missing her. That had me on the edge of my seat when I watched it the first time. I was like, oh my god, oh my god. If she just moves
Hmm.
like a second slower, he's gonna catch her. And I loved the ending. That big reveal at
Mrs. Loomis? What?
Billy's mother.
Yeah. I think
I
the
was like, oh, this
twist
makes
was
sense.
interesting, but don't you feel that she was a little underdeveloped though? Because she was only in like 2 scenes before this, and it's like,
She was
oh,
in
I'm the
like
killer.
she was in like 3 or 4 scenes, but they're really small. She only talked to Gale, and she wasn't a suspect. She didn't do anything suspicious. And then also on rewatch, she says to the other reporters after Gale walks away, "Well, if the killer is patterning themselves after the Woodsboro murders, wouldn't it make sense if the killer was from Woodsboro?" I was like, why would she say that when she's the fucking killer and she's from Woodsboro?
I
Made
I
no
guess
sense.
I feel like because she was kind of forgotten, you know. I feel like because with the whole like murders, um, people were looking at Billy, but they were also kind of like, like they kind of blamed everything on Sydney's mom. Um, that I feel like people just might have just forgotten about his mom, like maybe just felt bad, like her husband cheated on her, she had to leave town, and now her son's a
She left
murderer.
town and left her son, who became a murderer. I don't feel sorry for her.
Yeah, but obviously these movies are a little, because everybody was kind of shitting on Maureen too. It's
Even
like,
she was shitting on your mother slept with my husband, so you just left your son with your husband, who's a piece of shit, and he became a killer, and that's somehow Maureen and Sydney's fault still.
yeah, like it was like all that. I felt bad for like Maureen, but I feel like because the first movie and the second movie never really like they kind of just slut shamed her the whole time, and they never really gave a reason or anything behind it. It was just kind of like, well, Sydney's mom did this, so now all these murders are happening, which I mean, it wasn't really her fault, but she was kind of
I
directly
mean,
connected to it, in a way.
yeah, Sydney's mom was married and she was having an affair, but so was the men she was sleeping with. So whatever. But from that, let's talk about the characters in this movie. Let's start with Sydney. How'd you guys like or dislike Sydney compared to the last movie?
I liked her. I feel like in this movie she was kind of I guess I kind of liked the fact that even though she kind of went through all that, she was still trying to live her life in some way. Um I didn't like how towards the end she was getting kind of like suspicious of Derek, even though like throughout, like I think like the beginning of the movie she was trusting him, saying yeah, no, it's not him, and then in the end she was like, maybe it is him, and then he dies. I didn't like that about her, because it's like, ma'am, like there's no, like, you spent most of this time trusting him, and you kind of have to trust him in a way, and the second you don't, you kind of like, he dies. um but I felt like she was kind of stronger in this movie, like she had that fighter in her. um yeah, like she was, I don't know, I like her. I think I like her overall, like throughout the whole series, but I really liked her in the second movie.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can't really go wrong with Sidney Prescott. A little bit more tortured because of the events of the first movie, uh, but still, um, yeah, you can't go wrong with Neve Campbell. I don't really have any strong opinions. I just liked her.
I liked Sydney in this movie. It was definitely a change, and I like that she was traumatized, but not to like a point where she was fortifying her dorm room and whatnot. She was smart and aware of things more this time because of prior events. But her whole life wasn't just like stopped. Because horror movies have a bad habit of like making the surviving female character so tortured and so damaged that like their whole life is just ruined. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I kind of, it would be justified given the fact that your mother was murdered by your boyfriend, and your boyfriend murdered your best friend and several other people. You had sex with him, and then he tried to kill you, but you had to kill him and his best friend. So she could have been justifiably like really fucked up. But I'm glad they didn't go down that route.
Yeah, I feel like personally, like if that would have happened to me, I would have been like in the woods and just not talk to people like ever. Um,
Fuck everyone.
yeah, because I was really surprised that the first time I watched it, I was kind of surprised that she had like a boyfriend, because I would have been paranoid as hell. Like I would have been like, no, you're trying to kill me. You're trying to kill me.
Everybody's a
Everyone's trying to kill
suspect.
me. I'll just stick with my, my friends, people that I know. Um, yeah, I feel like, and that's what I really liked about her, because she was really, really tough.
What about Gale? Now, for me, the fact that Gale got punched
Share with us,
again,
please.
I was like, come on, Gale, you didn't learn not to piss Sydney off. Come on. But I think I liked Gale more in this movie. She was like so like zeroed in and focused the last movie that she came off as like a cold, like career focused bitch. But this one I was like, okay, she's still kind of that person, but she's also kind of softening, which really, which you can tell because at the end of the first movie, she just went right back to reporting. But the end of this movie, she saw that Dewey was alive and she ran straight to Dewey, and I was like, okay, that's the character switch right there.
Certainly
But
like
that,
a anti-hero vibe with
yeah,
her, right?
mm-hmm. But I hated all that shit she pulled. She tried to pull with Cotton.
Oh yeah.
What about you guys? How'd you guys feel about Gale this go around?
I kind of liked her. I don't know. I didn't really like her in the first movie. I do agree that in the second movie she did soften up a bit, but I think like in the beginning, I really didn't like her when she was trying to pull, yeah, like that thing with Cotton. It was so unnecessary. Um, and because I don't know, like she really just couldn't leave Sidney alone, you know? Like you can't, you're following kind of like this girl around because of all these murders. Um I don't know, and I felt bad. I felt bad for Cotton too, to be honest, because she was kind of giving him like a lot of promises that she wasn't really. I mean, she was trying to keep, but she wasn't also 100% sure that she was going to keep them. Like with that 10-minute television thing he wanted. Um, that I thought. I mean, I don't know. It made me feel bad, I guess, for Sydney and for Cotton because I don't know. I mean, I do like her whole, career woman vibe. Like she's a shark, and I love that about her. But it made me feel bad for everybody else.
I would say that she has the best character arc throughout the entire series.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like she had the most development, honestly. I think out of
Mm-hmm.
everyone.
But we won't. We won't. Spoilers. Just know that there's more Gale to come. What about you, Kennedy?
Yeah, I think that she was a little bit more likable, kind of heading towards that sort of baby face vibe, if you guys know anything about wrestling. But uh, a lot more actively searching for the killer in this movie around. Which, by the way, I like the chase that she had with the killer, kind of closer to the end of the movie. With
Oh yeah,
Dewey.
that's the one I mentioned. I love that scene.
Yeah, it's a really really good scene. To be honest, I wouldn't have been as stealthy as her, and I probably would have gotten like stabbed like 20 times, I guess.
That's what I'm saying. Like if she was a second off from like jumping to the next hiding spot, they would have caught her.
Yeah,
I would have got caught.
yeah, but that whole sequence was really cool. I do have okay. I guess I'm getting a little too ahead of myself, but I feel like the her relationship with Dewey after watching like the third one is a little bit all over the place. But I guess we'll get into that more for the third one. But yeah, she was.
I will say their relationship is in a different stage with each movie. It's kind of annoying, but
Yeah, it like progresses, but then it like regresses again, and it's like
yeah, 'cause I will say you never see them as a happy all together couple at any time.
right,
I will say that.
right, yeah, but I think she's likable. I think she's a hell of a lot more likable in this one than in the first one, for sure. A lot more scenes of her being involved in the investigation, which is pretty cool.
I always like her interaction with her cameraman.
Oh yeah.
But this is the last time we get Gale and a camera person together, so I enjoyed it. But what about Dewey? I'm just gonna start off. I was surprised that Dewey survived. My first time watching this, and when I saw Dewey pop up, I was like, "What the fuck is he doing here? Didn't he die? Why is Dewey back? He didn't do anything in that first movie, and now he's back and he's suspicious of everyone, suspicious of Derek." I was like, "Why the fuck is he limping?" But then they explained that it was some nerve damage, and I was like,
Yeah.
Dewey being on this in this movie is a nerve damage that needs to be corrected ASAP because I don't need him."
I
What
feel
about you
like,
guys?
yeah, so that nerve damage, like, explanation it was kind of weird. I feel like it was kind of out of place. Because it was like, so you're limping, nerve damage. Okay, cool. Just move on. I'm like, no, hold up. Like, why
It
is it?
was a script. It was like a bunch of different scripts. So they just a lot left over from different scripts.
Ah, that makes sense. I mean, he was kind of like, I feel like he was kind of like a comfort character or comfort person for everyone. Because I mean, when he first popped up in the second movie, Sydney was like, "Oh my god," and she went to him, talked to him, and I feel like it's the first time you see Sydney so happy, to be honest, in the movie. Um, well, it's in the beginning, right? But still, I feel like, and for Gale too. I mean, Gale was happy to see him, even though she hurt his little heart. He was over here talking to Randy, so Randy can get out all his movie fanatic stuff, so they can talk about these
The rules of
their
the sequels.
theories. Yeah, I feel like he was just kind of like a comfort character for everyone there, like kind of like a I don't know. He just reminds me of like a cuddly bear, like
I have to say, him reading the description of himself that Gale put in the book was so funny for me.
I felt like it was kind of spot on.
It was.
Right? Like I'm like, yeah, I mean, you do that. You do exhume very I don't know what she said, but he exhumes that energy. I see it. It
He had
makes
a
sense.
Barney Fife-ish charm.
Yeah, like he does. And I feel like but he does the same thing in the second movie. But I do agree with what you said cuz like in the first movie he didn't really do much. And the second movie suddenly he was kind of playing detective like out of nowhere, like you're not. I don't know. I guess I feel like they're trying to give him like a more important role as to why they brought him back in the first place. But it was kind of like
Someone dies and
awkward.
he has to go protect Sydney. But I think, given the fact that his sister was murdered and she was best friends with Sydney, I guess he probably has that leftover sibling attachment to Sydney, which kind of makes sense now that I'm thinking about it. Because I always wondered, like, why the fuck is he always trying to protect Sydney? But now I'm thinking about it. His sister was Sydney's best friend. They probably spent a lot of time together. Because I think there's only like a 3 or 4 year age difference between them. So they probably would have been around a lot each other growing up as kids in a small town.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense now. What about you, Kennedy?
I mean, just seeing how violently he got stabbed at the end, I'm just like, how did you survive? How? But I mean, I knew that he survived because I've seen Scream 4. I knew that he was in it, but like still, like this dude just keeps getting like stabbed and like walking away alive. But he's a likable idiot to me. I don't like him too much, to be honest. A little bit on the silly side. Um, I know a lot of people that like Dewey, and then there's some people that don't, and I'm like in between. Like if he dies, I don't mind, but I don't mind him being on screen either.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like with every movie they try to insert Dewey in more, but it's just like if you took Dewey out, the movie would still play pretty similar.
Pretty
But then
similarly,
again,
yeah.
yeah. But I kind of love the interaction between Dewey and Gale. Like individually, I'm like, eh.
It's
But
awkward.
together,
It's hella
but
awkward.
together they're gold. I'm like, I kind of like the awkward flirtation that they have, and the awkward flirtation always leads to them fucking solving the murders.
That's true.
And this is 2 movies straight where Dewey has nothing to do in the climax besides like showing up afterwards on a stretcher.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel
But
like he's
from
just not like a strong character in general. Like unless he's with someone else, he's not a strong character. Like Sydney alone is fine, Gale alone is fine, but I feel like Dewey kind of has to be with someone else in order for his character to work.
Yes. Yes. I actually 100% agree with that. Yeah.
and he doesn't fit in the climax of the movies, which we'll get to in Scream 3. That's where I really am like, why is he here? But from Dewey, let's hop over to Randy. I was so sad. I was happy to see Randy back. I loved his first scene, his introduction scene, like him in the classroom discussing sequels. I was like, this is a little much discussing sequels and the sequels. Can the sequel be better than the original? But then they started like listing sequels, and I was like, oh, all of these are like a hit because, to be honest, every movie they named, I've seen. Like Godfather Part 2, Terminator 2, Jaws 2, The Revenge. I've seen all those movies.
Mm.
So I like that whole scene, and Randy's still giving his sequel movie, his sequel rules, and still has a crush on Sydney. Still hasn't gotten Sydney, but then they killed Randy, which there were a bunch of script rewrites, but Randy was always supposed to die.
Oh, that's sad.
He was always supposed to die and die in the same way. It's just Randy. Okay, I was gonna save this for the behind the scenes info, but originally written, Randy was supposed to be Gale's cameraman, not a student, which is why he died in the news van.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's cool.
but script rewrites, he wasn't a cameraman, but they still killed him in the news van. It was supposed to be more symbolic in the original script, but whatever. But what do you guys think about Randy?
I honestly don't have a lot of like thoughts about Randy. I didn't really in the first movie he was just kind of there. In this movie, I feel like because in the first movie he didn't really like impact me a lot. I was just kind of like, oh, it's that guy. I didn't know his name was Randy till like he came up a lot more, and I was like, oh, okay. But the only thing that stands out for me about him was that his crush on Sidney, but also just his murder scene, and I think that's it. He's okay for me, I guess. Um, I don't get the whole like him having a crush on Sidney type of deal. I feel like it doesn't really like matter, I guess. Cause I mean he died and they never really did anything with it, you know? Um so overall, I don't know, he's just kind of there for me.
Yeah, I certainly don't think that Randy is like this like hugely developed character or anything like that. But I found him likable, more likable than Dewey. I kind of understand the arguments that like his crush on Sydney is a little out of place, and it doesn't go anywhere. So it's like they kill him anyway. So like why even like show that? But I still find him really likable. And like I said before, I hate seeing survivors from the first movie die in the second one because it kind of ruins it a little bit. But he's not one of the big three. He wasn't like this huge character or anything like that.
But like Randy said, you have to raise the stakes, and the only way to raise the stakes is by offering somebody you would have never thought.
But he was such an important character for like talking about the rules of filmmaking to help our main characters that they even had to bring him back in the third one, which just kind of shows you that he was more of a
That they should have
fan
kept him and killed
favorite.
Dewey.
Yeah.
But from the person who was supposed to be the cameraman to the guy who actually became the cameraman, Joel. Now, a little behind the scenes on Joel. Joel was originally written to have a larger role in the movie. He was supposed to be part of Sidney's like friend group. Him and Hallie was supposed to be a couple in the original scripts, and because that was going to be Randy was going to be the cameraman, and Joel was supposed to be killed in the original script. But due to leaks, they changed that. Joe became the cameraman, and he lived. And I have to say, if I was in a horror movie, I would be Joe, because Joe was like, well, first of all, your cameraman was murdered the last time this shit was going down. I'm getting the fuck up out of here. And he walked away and he drove away in a yellow cab. And I was like, Joel, yes, get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah.
Because when people start dying around these four people again, you need to leave.
Yeah.
So what about you guys? I mean, there's not much to say about Joe. He got the hell out of Dodge, like at the halfway point. Smart man.
Yeah, that's basically, because I mean, I just feel like you see people dying, and it's literally the same four people who lived from the other murders. Either they live or I'm gonna live, and I kind of doubt I'm gonna live, So, yeah, like I liked him. I liked him as a cameraman. I liked him being there because he would like the one scene where I think he was I think first introduced and where Sidney had hit, Gale because she was trying to ambush her with cotton. And he was like, "That's cold," and I'm like, "Yeah, like that was awful."
My favorite line when Hallie was like, "Did you get that on film?" and he was like, "Yes, I got that on film."
Yeah.
That was that was all ad lib. I was like, see, that was funny. Joel had some good. They had like good comic relief. This movie that didn't seem forced. Any thoughts on Joel Kennedy?
I vaguely remember him, but but I do remember him getting the fuck out of there, which is probably one of the most smartest decisions in horror movie history, knowing when to get the hell out. So, uh, not much more to say. I would have wished that was Randy instead. Oh, dude, if that was Randy, it would have been brilliant. Because he was like, "No, I understand where my type of character is going to like what's his end. So I'm just gonna fucking leave." That would have been brilliant.
Randy would have never left Sydney.
Well, if he didn't know that Sydney was there, maybe he would have.
Yeah, I feel like for him being such a like a movie fanatic, like I don't know. I mean, like I would have left too if I would have known that these murders are happening again, and you're seeing all the signs, and you're kind of part of the top. Like you're a survivor, and you're kind of like in the limelight a little bit. People know you were a survivor. What I mean, it would kind of make sense that the killer would come after you at some point. Maybe not like right away, but at some point. So like you would leave. Well, I would leave.
Yes, he was like, "I'm the hell up out of here." But what about Cotton Weary? We saw him for a 5-second news clip in the first movie. He was mentioned a lot in the first movie. He was wrongly identified and convicted and went to jail for murdering Maureen Prescott when all he did was have an affair with her. We get a lot more of Cotton, who was being creepy this entire movie and not respecting Sydney's boundaries. But would you guys think about seeing more of Cotton?
He was so creepy. They made him so creepy. Like I mean,
Everybody's a suspect!
yeah, he was creepy. Like like he was just so creepy. Cuz I mean, he was just really I guess I didn't know like what to expect, cuz he wasn't really there on the first movie. But when he came back, he was just so intense. He was so like his eyes looked very like they just looked through you. He looked like a serial killer. Like I can see why people believed her because he looked and he acted like a serial killer. When he would say things, he said them so calmly but so passive aggressively that it was like weird. And then um that scene in the library where he basically like cornered Sydney was weird. Like you're over here trying to say that you want to like, help yourself and you want her to help you, but you're like cuz he was like hovering over her and just like getting like really close to her, and it's like she already turned down the interview with you. She kind of, I guess obviously to some level thinks you're weird enough to kill her mom, um but you're gonna go ahead and try to like very aggressively say, please do this interview for me because I want to be famous. I for a second I did think that like maybe he was doing the killings, but then it kind of didn't make sense with everything else. But honestly, if I don't know, if like at some point like they made Cotton like a killer, I would be like, that makes sense. I see that because he was just weird. He was so weird throughout the whole movie. It made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think Liev Schreiber was excellent as Cotton. Uh, in a movie full of like suspects, and he always remained there at the top, even though like we exonerated him for the Sydney's mom in the first movie, but he still acting hella sus, uh, to just kind of rule him out of everything else. Marcus, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the original script like at the end, like him turning on Sydney, like you ruined my life?
Uh,
I'm like,
somewhat,
like
but I'll get more detail later. But that ending scene where it's like, so if she didn't say yes to the interview, like, was he gonna shoot her? They leave it up in the air.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like he was just a weird person to me. Like he was just I guess he was just very very intense, and they made him very like obsessed with the idea of I'm gonna get my 10 minutes on national television, but I need Sydney to do that. And I guess he was just a really intense guy for me personally.
All right, from Cotton to Debbie Salt slash Mrs. Loomis. What'd you
Oh,
guys think about Mrs. Loomis and her being the killer in the end?
I kind of liked how they like sprinkled her in throughout the movie, you know? Um because I mean, I kind of like suspected her a little bit, not like Billy's mom, but that reporter lady, Debbie, because she would only talk to Gale, and she would say, you know, kind of like, you know, how she admired Gale, how she wanted to be like Gale, she wanted to write her book, but she was never really in the front of anything, which I thought was kind of weird because it's like, you know, if you're trying to be like Gale, you would want to talk to Sidney, you want to talk to Randy, you want to, you know, get in everything. But she wasn't. She was just kind of like following behind Gale, telling her little comments. I don't know. I liked her. I thought she was kind of smart, honestly. She really like played it well. Like, and she was creepy. She was also kind of creepy. Not throughout the movie, but like in the end when you know everybody found out that it was Billy's mom, like you could see that she looked crazy. Like her eyes were popping out, and she was just, you
She just
know,
shot Mickey. Like, oh, Mickey, there's gonna be a trial. And I was like,
yeah.
yeah. I being, you know, um a, a serial killer's mom, it was really good, honestly. Like I kind of I liked her character. I liked her. She was creepy, um, but it worked because she was, you know, killing people.
Where did that money come from? Because she had plastic surgery, a little bit of work done apparently. Plus, she was paying for Mickey's tuition.
That's
Like,
true.
where the fuck did you get this money? And watching it back, you realize that Debbie Salt, aka Mrs. Loomis, never had any scenes with Randy or Sydney. And you're like, oh, that makes sense because Sydney instantly recognized who she was.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this makes sense. That's why she was never around Sydney. She was never around Randy. She probably also avoided Dewey because, again, that small town. Because Gale wasn't from Woodsboro. By the time she got there, the affair had been exposed and Debbie had left. I mean, Mrs. Loomis had left. So she avoided the characters who would recognize her. And I was like, oh, it kind of makes sense now. Kennedy.
Which, by the way, I love that scene earlier in the movie where Gail sees through her bullshit. Where she's like, "Oh yeah, I went to your conference and I was the first person to shake your hand or whatever, yada yada yada," and and Gail basically told her to fuck off. Not like that, but she was like, But I would have liked to have seen more scenes of Mrs. Loomis, cause she wasn't in the movie really much at all, like 3 scenes. Um, I just would have liked to have seen her character be developed a little bit more. Uh, Hell, have her on that investigation with Gale to kind of reduce suspicion of her, you know. I just felt that it was just one of those things where it's like they had a character in one scene and then they make them the killer at the end. I didn't like that. I think her motivation was fine, but I would have wanted to see her more in the movie. I don't think that the ending was that deserved for her. Billy and Stu, they were throughout the whole movie. They were throughout the whole movie in Scream 1. Just imagine if in Scream 1 Billy and Stu were just like in one scene. And at the end, oh yeah, by the
True.
way, we're the killers.
I actually
And
really liked that they did that. Actually,
really, but she had no interaction with the main, like person though until the very end. So it's like,
I know, but like, it's because I guess because in the first movie she was kind of like a ghost. You know, like people talked about her, people said she left, but you never really got much info after that. So in the second movie, I liked how she was kind of like in there, but not really in there. And then it's like, oh my god, it's Billy's mom, like the person that you've been hearing about through, like, you know, the first movie and the second movie, and now you see her, and turns out she, you know, she got this kid to like to help her kill people who also kind of looks like her. He doesn't really look like her son, but his hair kind of, you know, he had that whole Billy Loomis hair going on, which I thought was kind of like
Hmm.
funny, you know, because well, yeah, I thought it was cool. I thought like having her behind the scenes as like a mastermind was cool. I think I forgot what his name was. Um I think she might have gotten him to do most of the killings while she kind of like stayed like in the back and was just kind of like telling him what to do, you know. She was like
Yeah.
Billy, you know, he was like the mastermind of everything. He got Stu, you know, to for both of them to start killing people, but I felt like she kind of did the same thing, which is why I like the fact that she was barely in there because, you know, I mean, she was like mentioned only like a couple times in the first movie. In the second movie, you never really thought about her like at all. You would just see some weird reporter lady following, you know, Gale around trying to be like Gale, and then turns out it's Billy's mom who, you know, you just never really thought about. And I thought, I don't know, I liked it. I thought how it connected um without really, you know, without you really seeing it.
I get that.
Yeah.
But speaking of Mickey, let's talk about Mickey. I knew it was Mickey from the first creepy scene he gave. I was like, yeah, he's the killer or one of the killers. I didn't suspect it being Billy's mom and the news reporter, but I knew it was Mickey like right off the bat. There was no way in hell Mickey wasn't the killer. And then he disappeared for like half of the movie. The last time we saw Mickey was when Sydney's boyfriend sang the song in the lunchroom. And then we didn't see Mickey for the rest of the movie until the very end. It's like, of course Mickey's the fucking killer. Look at his
Yeah.
hair. Look at Mickey. Mickey's creepy. He gives me like rapist serial killer vibes. It has to be him.
Yeah, he was definitely one of the more obvious choices of killer of who the killer was. Just overall just creepy vibe. It's like you're basically telling me that he's the killer, and I don't think many people were surprised. But I do think that his motivation was interesting because I do think that like him talking about how like the movies are making people crazy. I do think that's a relevant topic in like our culture. That like some people think that playing violent video games or violent movies like makes you a killer or a more violent person. So I thought his motivation was interesting, and I like Timothy Olyphant. You can never go wrong with Timothy Olyphant. So
He just wanted to be famous. I mean, that was post like the O.J. Simpson trial. So big murder trials are like in at that point,
yeah,
which they still are, sadly. What about you, Maria?
He honestly, it was the hair. Like when I first saw the movie and I saw his hair, and I'm like, his hair looks a lot like Billy's. And then he got kind of creepy throughout the movie. And then I'm like, I like. I feel like there was a reason they made his hair that way. Yeah, I think he was kind of creepy. He was that scene when I think it was after Sidney was attacked and Derek had gone into the house to save her, and they were in the, I think in the police station, and he just casually said like who would go like into the house like that, which got her thinking like, oh, like yeah, like who would do that. I felt was kind of, it was kind of like suspicious from to me for him to say that, because he's your best friend. Like, why would you say something so um I don't know, like, I mean, I feel like Derek was overall a good guy. Like, I feel like he would have gone inside for anybody, like to help, to save someone. He's a big guy, it makes sense. So for his best friend to kind of throw some suspicion onto him was kind of weird for me. And that's where I was like, I think Mickey, I feel like he was the other killer. It would have made sense to me.
I hate that they don't say how long it's been since the first movie, because this movie came out less than a year after the original. But in movie universe, Gale's book has been published, and the movie had been written, casted, filmed, and is now premiering when the movie starts. And Cotton's out of prison. Debbie Salt has Mrs. Loomis has lost weight, found Mickey, put Mickey in school, and it's like, so how long has it been since the first movie? That kind of confuses me. Cause I'm just like, cause how long have Derek and fucking Mickey been friends? I never got the best friend vibes. I got like they all gravitate to each other recently and they don't really know each other that well. Is what I was getting.
That's interesting.
But speaking of Derek, what'd you guys think of Derek?
I thought he was. I thought. Well, I like Jerry O'Connell because of the Kangaroo movie, but I think they did a good job of like kind of making you suspect if he was a killer or not. Because after the events of the first movie, where obviously Billy Loomis was the killer, it gave you enough doubt that like, oh shit, is it the boyfriend again? Like, could it be? Uh, Especially at the end where like Mickey was trying to mind fuck you, where he was telling Jerry like, "Yeah, we did this together, right?" uh, but I think he did a good job, and he was a likable character. You know, so I think in terms of boyfriend material, I think he was better than Billy Loomis. That's for sure.
Yeah, I liked him. And I feel like because he was a better boyfriend than Billy, that I didn't think he would have been the killer. He was just, I don't know. I feel like he was just a nice character. Like, he was a nice guy. I feel like to me, he was never suspicious throughout the movie. So that scene where Mickey was trying to say how they were both the killers, I think for a second I believed it, and I would have been like really surprised because I thought he was a good person, a good guy. Um, but I like him. I like him as a character.
Let's end it with Hallie. You guys have any thoughts on Hallie, Sydney's black best friend?
That's such a random character to end it on, to be honest. Dude, I don't remember her that much beyond like her sneaking into the car with like the agents. Uh, I think she said that she was like her therapist or something, and then yeah, when like Mickey did pulled off a flash and like pulled up right behind her and killed her. Uh, I mean, I guess she was useful for their death, right? She was useful for the death, but didn't find her all that interesting, to be honest. Barely remember.
Yeah, I feel like she was kind of not really like there, except for yeah that scene where they had crashed. Um, yeah, I don't know. She didn't really stand out for me actually. Besides her trying to get Sydney to talk to people and being like a good friend, she just wasn't really. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't really have, I guess, thoughts about her. Honestly, when I was watching the movie.
Well, same. I have nothing to say about Hallie. I don't have anything to say about Hallie here. But let's hop over to the behind the scenes sections of our little podcast. The budget for this movie was $24 million, and they made 172.4 million back at the box office. So definitely a third one was being made because the money they made. It'd been dumb not to have made a third one. This movie was released less than a year after the first one. The first one was released in December. This one came out like a couple weeks before that, the following year. Scream 2 took place. It filmed over a 9-week period starting in mid June. Uh, while writing the script for Scream, Kevin Williamson had developed like a 5-page treatment for like potential sequels. So he had already had this in mind. So he kind of just went with the flow. The college aspect was always going to be there. The copycat killers were always going to be there. By the time the production company and the studio had greenlit the second movie, Williamson had already had like over half of the script down packed. But there were a lot of scripts being written because there were a lot of leaks. At one point, there were supposed to be 4 different killers. It was still going to be Mrs. Loomis, but it was going to be Derek instead of Mickey with Cotton and Hallie. Like a group effort at one point, which would have been insane. Which also factors in why Derek and Cotton are very suspicious throughout the movie. I think Hallie and Mrs. Loomis would have been the only like, oh shit, really?
Yeah.
I kind of would have liked it if Sydney's best friend was the killer. Her boyfriend last time, best friend this time. That would have been
That
interesting.
would have been interesting.
Yep, but that changed a lot because they wanted to be 4, but then it changed to just 2, and they kept it with 2, but the 2 changed a lot over the period. Because then it became just Hallie and Derek, and then it became Cotton and Mrs. Loomis, and then it became Derek and Mickey, and then Mickey and Hallie. So they just kept changing until they just went with Mrs. Loomis and Mickey due to leaks. The ending was changed several times because at one point he wanted to be like a mass shootout where everyone died. So it was going to be Mrs. Loomis still shoots Gale. Gale shoot Mrs. Loomis. Um, Cotton was going to shoot Sidney because she didn't agree to the interview, and then Sidney was going to die. Was going to kill Cotton before she died of a gunshot wound, and then dude was going to just be dead wherever because he got stabbed.
Mhm.
But they thought that a final shootout would be disrespectful given that Columbine had just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're like, yeah, no, let's scrap that. But that brings us to the end. And before we end, what's your review out of 5, Maria?
Um, like a 4 out of 5. I liked it. I feel like it's a good movie to kind of like Like I would rewatch it if I didn't, have to.
I can't remember what I gave the first one. I do like the first one a little better than this one, but overall I still really enjoy this one. If I didn't give the first one a 5 out of 5, then I'm giving it a 5 out of 5 now, and I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. I still thought this was a really good movie, enough to make me want to jump on the third one right after seeing this one.
I give this one a 4 out of 5 because I like how they expanded on characters, the characters that we had already seen that survived, and then they expanded on characters that we only heard about or only saw for like a second, and you got to see and spend more time with them in this movie. So I enjoyed it. They definitely built out the world that they were developing. But with that, we come to an end. Thank you guys so much for listening. Join us in 2 weeks for Scream 3. Bye, everybody. The Haddonfield Horrors Podcast is a Letters to Media production.
Should we do an intro?